So I'll call this regular council meeting of 2014-01-14 to order. And a motion for approval of the agenda is amended. Moved by Councilor Hewitt, second by Councilor Leafwood.
Could I have? No, I'll just do it one more. Excuse me.
All in favor? Motion passes. An adoption of the regular council meeting 2013-12-10.
No.
Moved by Councilor Holland, second by Councilor Hewitt. Discussion, all in favor? Motion passes. Special council meeting of 2013-12-17. Moved by Councilor Hewitt, second by Councilor Leafwood. Discussion, all in favor? Motion passes. Committee of the whole meeting 2014-01-7. Received. Moved by Councilor Leafwood, second by Councilor Lamb. Discussion, all in favor? Motion passes. Delegation, 9 dot engineering. Kaslo River intake option study.
Okay, we're going to go right there. What's happening is not seeing the whole thing.
Yeah, but you
That was better. Did we win the battle?
yeah, so
Hi, we're from 9 Dot Engineering and Aqua Diversities. My name is Stephen Thompson. I'm a civil engineer, and Julie Turgeon's a project manager and designer, and Nathan Ward's a water quality technologist with Aqua Diversities. And we're here to speak on the Kaslo water secondary intake and power options study.
So the study, like Stephen mentioned, it looks at the Kaslo River water intake and emergency power option study. The objectives were to review the Village of Kaslo's current emergency water system infrastructure, provide preliminary options for a new or improved secondary water intake and power backup system, provide budgetary estimates for each of these options, and present these options to you tonight. Just going to move that one slide basically just that shows a general view of the area we're discussing, and looking at more of a close-up of Kaslo and the Kaslo River that flows through right the center, that encompasses the whole Kaslo water system. First, the water is collected in Kemp Creek in their intake that was rebuilt in last spring. Then the water flows through gravity to the break tank. From the break tank, the water goes through, flows to the reservoir, 1.5 million gallon reservoir by gravity. From there, it is by gravity to the pump house, which is right next to Kaslo River. At the pump house, there's also a pressure reducing station, one. And this is also the location where the Kaslo River intake is. From the pump house, the water flows to, by gravity also, it goes uphill a little bit, loses some pressure, but then reaches the water treatment plant with enough pressure to go through the sand filters. And the top photo shows the emergency backup generator for the water treatment plant. And taking a step back, closer look at the Kaslo River intake. The top picture shows the summer, pretty much the general location where the intake is underneath the riverbed. The second picture is how beautiful it is in the winter. And the next is the wet well that is within the pump house, where the water is by gravity brought to the wet well inside the pump house and then pumped with the 2 pumps that are shown in the next picture. And then the 2 drawings below are drawings from Urban Systems for their original proposal. It shows the laterals where the water, the screens where the water is collected, and then inside the pump house, inside the wet well. Issues were outlined with this intake. Is basically the screens were clogging and preventing enough water to supply what the village requires from this intake. And also the backwash as well was an issue with the system. And another item that we're discussing in this report is there's no available backup power for the pump house and for the secondary intake. This is just showing what the water looks like when it's backwashed through the kaslo intake. It's quite brown. And it's just kind of dropped back into the creek. That's the river.
All right, so I'm going to talk about some recommendations and then the two options that are presented in the report. The report's very detailed, as Julie mentioned, but this is just an overview. Our first recommendation is that we don't suggest that you spend money without a little bit more information. And so what we're thinking is that if you perform some actual flow analysis, we would get a better idea of exactly how much water you're using. Really, right now, most of the data that we have is by projection or based on calculations of what you should be using or what's going through the treatment plant. But we could monitor and see when your demand is happening and things like that, so that you're not necessarily putting in a treatment system that's too big. The other thing that we suggest is that you optimize your existing water treatment plant operations. We felt, based on our review with Glenn, that there are some things that might allow you to backwash less frequently, which you're already started with, some chemicals that can make the process work better, things like that. But always it's best to optimize what you already have. And so we might be able to make some recommendations to help you improve the operation of that plant, or work with you to get a little more data to support that. And then another thing worth exploring is getting some of your irrigation water off of your system, so something like the golf course. It doesn't make a lot of sense to treat water, which is expensive, to then use it for irrigation or something like that. So those are things that we could work towards and that you could think about. But when we looked at the many options, we terminated quite a few of them. Things like wells didn't make sense in this area, other things like that. But what we felt made the most sense based on the data was working with your existing Kaslo River intake, because you have millions of dollars worth of infrastructure there. It's just not working. And we feel like it's something that could be made to work. And so what we're recommending is a phased approach, because I think if you can do these things in steps, that you might be able to not spend as much money. Rather than just looking at the big picture, we could look at doing some intermittent steps, I guess. So what we'll talk about first is our recommendation for phase one. So phase one, we're recommending that you use air scour backwash. Is that what we're talking about here? Yeah. Air-assisted backwash. And so what we think is that when you're backwashing the existing system, that if you add air, it will help it backwash better. It'll also use less water to backwash, because remember, you're using your water from your reservoir that you could otherwise be using through your treatment system. It also might have the potential to help you in a situation of where the Kemp Creek system failed and you didn't have the water to backwash the system, which is a limitation of this existing system. If Kemp Creek failed, you wouldn't have water to backwash the system. So that's one of the limitations. But an air scour would be a cost-effective thing to try to see if it enhances the backwash of the existing system. Keeping in mind that you've got this infiltration gallery in the river itself, and that's what's plugging. So by adding air when you're backwashing it, it'll help get that sediment out and last longer. We talked about things, and I'm going to read through this, but we could also look at automating the backwash process so that it happens more frequently but less aggressively. And that would probably, it's difficult because right now Glenn's doing it manually, so he's not going to go down there at 3 in the morning necessarily to backwash it. But if you automated that process, which could be done while you're setting up the air, so we'd have automatic valves and a computer controlling it, it would backwash more frequently but less aggressively, and then you would prevent there from being a problem like there is right now, where it's so bad that it's very difficult to backwash. Okay? So I'll just read through these notes. We said that the benefit of this option is using the existing infrastructure, that it's very limited, the modifications required, so therefore cost effective. It adds additional operational flexibility, low operation and maintenance required, from the sense that if we automate it, you wouldn't be manually doing that work. There's the potential application for the Ministry of Environment for changes in and about a stream. So one of the things that we're concerned about is that the regulations have become much more stringent since you even put that system in. So one of the things that can make the cost escalate is if you're having to work through the different ministries to get approval to do things in a stream and this and that. And we feel like we can't say that you wouldn't. We'd have to go through the proper channels, obviously, or you would. But there's a good chance that by just adding an air scour, you wouldn't necessarily have to open up the case again, so to speak. And in fact, this was actually mentioned in your original interior health application. They wrote back and actually recommended that you put air scouring in, and they actually referred to different systems where they have failed without the air scour. And so there's some history there as well. So, we have some budgetary pricing here talking about what it would cost, and I can go over those numbers. It's in the report. It's up to you. But like an upgrade like this, including the computerized system and everything, would have a budgetary price, including a contingency of about $136,000. So this might be something that you could potentially have the funds to do to start the process. I don't know, or apply for funding. We'll go to the next option, or next phase, sorry, of this first option, which is phase 2, which I can't really read there.
It's removal of the geofabric, the existing geofabric, and the sediments or the coarse film on them.
Okay, so you can zoom in now. So really what we're looking at is this infiltration basin, which this is a picture of. The way that it was engineered, it's just failing, it's not working. And what's happening is that it's clogging. So with water treatment, you always try and take solids out as quickly as you can, because if you don't take them out there, it'll be putting extra pressure on your water treatment system. Now remember I said we might be able to optimize the water treatment system. In fact, you already have to an extent, because you've found some water leaks that have reduced the amount of water that you need to produce, so you might have extra water to backwash now that you didn't. Ultimately, we might be able to reduce your backwashes based on some other things, like when we backwash, we can determine when to stop backwashing by looking at the turbidity and instead of an arbitrary backwash time, things like that. Those are the optimizations, so that's what you would do first. So the issue with taking off the geofabric around those screens is you're making the screens coarser. If the screens are coarser, more sediment's going to get into your raw water source, so that's where you're either putting additional loading on your water treatment plant, or maybe it can handle it. So the issue that we've identified with this, with the benefit, is that we're using existing infrastructure again. We're not looking at putting in a new intake, so that is going to be an easier approach with Ministry of Environment and Department of Fisheries and Oceans, because it's already something that's in place. You're just modifying it rather than putting in a new intake, which is usually quite prohibitive. Again, provides the operational flexibility. It provides the chance to see the infiltration screen's condition, because we would be exposing them. And then again, we wanted to bring to your attention that it would probably bring an application to Ministry of Environment, and that's when things become hard to do cost forecasting, because you don't really know what hoops they're going to make you jump through. However, again, by doing a modification to an existing system, there's usually more leniency. Okay, so that was the second phase, and to be honest, this is a very cost-effective option. We wouldn't do this if it wasn't necessary. If the air scouring is getting it clean, then there would be no point doing this. If the air scouring didn't work, we budgeted that for under $10,000, you'd be able to remove that geotextile fabric and expose the screens. Keeping in mind, though, that you're just moving the problem farther up the system. Okay? And then phase 3, I know that one, is pre-filtration. So what we would look at is if we couldn't put additional loading, when I say loading I mean that the turbidity or the particulate on your water treatment plant, you could look at doing pre-filtration inside the building. We looked at other options like settling ponds to take out the sediment before it goes into the system, and that wasn't really feasible because of the footprint that it would take and where the system is. But we did look at the option of putting in some pressure sand filters, and they are like a roughing filter. They would take you down to, say, 15 or 5 microns of particulate out, and then the water that would go through those would then go up and be treated to your treatment system But the benefit of this system is that you can backwash those systems with these filters with raw water, so you're not using up your treated water to backwash your existing system. So this is something that, again, in the scheme of the flow rates that we're talking about, is fairly cost effective. I'll just break through this quickly, but we looked at budgetary pricing of about $200,000 for the equipment. We think it would fit in your existing room, maybe $30,000 to plumb. We've got quite high engineering fees because there's some uncertainties with these numbers. Typically, if we were going to go ahead with it, we would firm up the pricing. These are budgetary numbers, but we allocated $70,000 for the engineering, legal, and administrative costs. With the contingency, and this is about $448,000 this option, which would be cheaper than a new treatment system, obviously, but still is quite an investment. And then, again, if you were to pursue this option, we would firm up the pricing. So those are the three options as far as using your existing infrastructure, which we feel is your best option. The second option is using Kootenay Lake for your water source, which is an abundant source, but there's a host of issues with it. And one thing that we'll go back to is that this still may be a long-term plan. As Kaslo grows, in the report you'll see that we've looked at the capacity that Kaslo River can give you and all of that, but the lake is obviously in an infinite capacity, so to speak, and it also would potentially open up geographically the Mirror Lake side of the community, and if you're going to put piping and such in. So this might be in your 20 or 25 or 30-year plan. It's still something you could work towards, but you can see the costs are going to be quite high as soon as you start putting new pipelines, intakes, and infrastructure in. You're quickly up to $4.5 million for a project like this. But there's nothing to say, like, it's still a very viable, feasible option. And most communities would never have something that close of that purity of water, because Kootenay Lake is ultimately a river. It's very pure water. So those are the two main options that we've considered. We still feel like option one would be your best and most economical approach, especially if you go about a phased approach, so that you're systematically, working up towards your end goal. So that's the basis of the report. And Stephen, I think you're going to speak a bit to the emergency power.
Okay. So the second part, we're looking at emergency power. At your current water treatment plant, you have a fixed generator that's in place with a diesel tank. We went ahead and recommended to look at getting a mobile unit. As a secondary backup, you're not always going to be needing it there, so there really isn't a point of having an expensive generator sitting there full of fuel that needs to be maintained. Mobile generators are not much more expensive, and it gives you the opportunity to power other events, or if there is an outage somewhere, you can move it around. So to run those two large pumps, it ends up being quite a large generator, 400 amp and 100 kilowatts, and we budgeted $90,000 for a mobile generator and about $45,000 to install the transfer switching connections that are required to power up that building and those pumps. Again, these are all Class D, so we have a 50% contingency, which is quite large, but at this preliminary point in this whole study, we want to keep the options open. So that concludes our presentation for tonight. Again, there's a lot more detail in the report itself, which we'll be sending out. And if you have any questions, now's the time. Go ahead.
My name is Rob Lang, and I was responsible for installing this system in the first place, so I know a little bit about it. Certainly the air scour idea has a lot of merit in my mind, and we have done it from time to time in emergency situations. Hauled some fairly large compressors out there and fed the air directly into the backwash system, and it has been effective. But I think your comment about doing more frequent backwashes certainly has some validity. That if it was timed, then you wouldn't allow it to get what I would term crusty or packed in tightly around the screens, which it does, and there's no way to prevent that. It's just the sedimentation that takes place in the river, and that's. Your comment about the geofabric is, I find, a bit puzzling in that material is not very fine. It's a very, very coarse material. And all it was intended to do was keep the larger boulders from, you know, there was a layer of gravel.
What was the size?
Yeah, something in that range, I
It's
think.
not geotech cloth.
It's not a fabric like you would put underneath a road surface or something
Right,
to separate gravel from clay or something like that. It was a screen, it was like a mesh, but the holes are quite large.
Okay. Well, that might be something that we didn't know about.
Right.
The drawings that we were working off were very vague. So,
Yeah.
but no, that's true. But so maybe that's something we would look at again.
Still exposing the pipes, ultimately removing the gravel off the top rock, so that, you know, ultimately you're not getting any filtration there is what we'd be looking at.
Yeah, and I think exposing parts of that intake would definitely serve a purpose. I think you would, if you could even expose, you know, parts of a couple laterals, you get a really good sense of what, you know, what you were dealing with. So that makes,
Because we know it flows adequately.
and in your study, have you been able to determine, like, I've never asked Glenn this question exactly, like would it meet our consumption today? Like, if it was properly backwashed, could you meet the daily demand out of that plant today? I mean, I know it won't do it in the middle of August, but
No, it wouldn't.
and of course freshet is a big issue, right?
It would do it even in freshet for a short period of time.
Yeah, but I mean continuously.
Continuously, even in winter, it would plug up in a couple of days.
If it wasn't plugging, though, it would meet the demand.
Yes.
Yes.
Because I think it's designed for 1,000 gallons a minute.
Yes.
Well, that's an interesting point, because really it was with 50% redundancy. But you could argue that you get your redundancy from Kemp Creek. So hydraulically, it can handle 1,000 gallons a minute because you know that the infiltration basin doesn't just drop when you're running both pumps. So it will physically do it.
Right.
Yeah.
And we
I'm just
checked.
basing it on the size of the pumps. That's all I'm saying. I realize the intake has limitations, but it was designed, I think, to handle in a bathtub. It was capable of producing about 2,800 gallons a minute. That's how much well screens in the
Right.
So when we're only getting 400 or 500, it's like 4/5 of those screen holes are plugged, right? We're only operating about 20% efficiency.
When we looked at the pipe sizing and the well screens, yeah, they definitely seem to be oversized.
Right. Anyway, I'll look forward to reading the full report. Sounds good.
Your suggestion about the air scour, is that in conjunction with water? It's not on its own.
That's right.
With,
It could be water and air, or in the event that you didn't have the water, in an emergency situation, you could just run air.
Be better than nothing.
It'd be better than nothing.
see, I don't think we ever ran both in mine.
I used to run water and air together. Like just hook it directly into that pipe and then let some flow through. Well, the only thing is you have to make sure the air pressure is higher than the water pressure coming from Kemp Creek. So you're putting water into your compressor with it. But yeah, that's an interesting scenario. But it should be able to be done.
Yeah, I mean, Julie showed a little video of the amount of sedimentation that was coming up during the backwash, and there's a lot of iron, it looks like, there. But we did test the water, or you guys did actually at our request, and there's not a high level of iron in Kaslo River, or Creek River. So it's interesting, that could be from the rock that they used on top of the mesh, or it could be infiltrating into that sump.
I think the infiltration is an issue.
Into the sump.
Into the sump,
Mhm.
because the rock that went back in the river is the same rock that was taken out of the river.
How do we know it didn't come from some tailing pond 100 years ago or
Oh,
something?
well, that's certainly possible. But
Yeah.
I'm just saying, there was no rock hauled in. We were told specifically by
Right.
environment to restore it exactly the way we found it.
So, I mean, again, obviously you wouldn't want to send a slug of that up to your water treatment plant. So if you had an automated process, it could backwash automatically before, to purge that out. Yeah. But really, that system in its entirety is an excellent system. It's just plugging.
Right.
And so I think it would warrant ultimately trying to work with it.
Yeah.
Because a lot of thought's been put into it.
And a lot of work.
Yeah.
A lot of hours.
Yeah.
I really don't understand most of what you guys are talking about, but with that phase system, is there a time constraint on that? Like if you do one, then we should do the next phase within a certain amount of time? Does it matter?
Well, we don't really know what you have access to for funding. And so having a document like this will give you what the numbers that you need to apply for funding. And so if you get a portion of your funding, then maybe you start with that phase one.
Right.
As far as the time sensitivity, no. I mean, there's nothing to say that we couldn't start looking at phase one of option one immediately. And that's a fairly straightforward thing to do. You know.
But again, taking a step back, we're still needing to, or feel like we should be looking at more data for flow, testing on how much flow, timing, how long that it takes plugging, still looking at that. So it's kind of both things would be happening at the same time.
But we wouldn't necessarily have to go to phase 2 if phase 1 worked.
No, and that's why we broke it up that way. It's so we're not doing things that we don't need to do, and spending money when we don't need to do it.
I mean, and now that we found out that the membrane cloth is larger, well, really it's just a function of, if you took a machine in there and disturbed it aggressively once, that might get you back on track to where the air scouring and backwashing would maintain it from then on forward.
From what we understood is that the operation of that system is very seasonal. You're not using that. So it's sediments building up and building up. And yes, we're backwashing kind of, but not on a regular basis. And that's where we feel like the issue is that the point it's at now is that it is plugged up and gummed up and it needs to be put through a big maintenance process and then maintained over time. And not having village staff running up there all the time to be doing that.
Any further questions, Council? Well, Jim?
No, good.
Well, thank you very much. I'm sure your report will be interesting reading. Is there a glossary to define the terms?
You can email us. Glenn knows actually.
All right.
We feel quite confident in our recommendations. Whenever, I mean, I didn't realize, Rob, I didn't recognize you at first, but I know you've worked through a lot of this kind of stuff, and they're not easy solutions to these problems, or they would have been dealt with. And a lot of times when you look at large systems like this, there isn't any easy answers, but as a group, we feel pretty strongly that this would be a good approach and fairly economical, and a strong, way to move forward anyways.
Okay.
Thank you.
One more time.
It does stay on for a little while to cool down the bulb, even after you told it to shut up. It's okay.
I might just question what's the best way to transfer, maybe to larger files via email would be okay?
You could try and email it first, but try that the you send it.
I have a link. Yeah.
Try that.
And then a hard copy would be okay?
Yes, as well.
Thank you all. Have a good night.
Thanks for all your help on that.
Okay.
Can I ask a couple questions of Glenn?
Yes.
Their estimates on that generator are quite high. Did you kind of concur with what they're recommending here?
We had size once, and I don't have, I can't remember the numbers, the kilowatts we figured. But we had Finnings, they're the cheapest for the gen set at the water plant, and they gave us a price of $55,000, was it? $5,500 for a gen set.
5,500. Oh, okay.
Yes.
I think you would have bought it by now.
Yeah.
But was that for the price for a stationary
Yes.
one? So this one was a robot. So that
And
would
there is
add-
advantages to that, you know, like you could be sitting here or
Yeah.
somewhere else, because it's not very often that we would need power up there.
Right.
I mean, we only need power there is when we lose power and we're on Castle River. On gravity, we don't use it.
That could be something that could be used in an emergency situation.
It could actually be sitting hooked up somewhere and used on a regular basis,
Oh, okay.
and then taken there if we had to. Because we do have a bit of warning at the water treatment plant. We get a call out that we've lost header pressure. We no longer have water coming into the plant. And we still have 100,000 gallons of treated water up there
Oh, okay.
before we have a problem. You know, people start running out of water, so there is a lag time there. You know, we could, if we're trying to be efficient with a gen set.
Yeah.
I'm surprised we're not more accurate with the flows. Like he seems, I thought they kind of thought that we didn't have a lot of information about flow rates and stuff.
Well, those type of meters that we have up there are not bad for process because they're consistent. Like they're telling you, like it's moving up and down, and the amount of chlorine is added based on flow, and the real accuracy of them was not that critical. But that style flow meter is not that accurate.
Yeah.
And for this purpose, they're talking total consumption because that's what's important up there. But it doesn't tell us, like right now, for WaterSmart, for instance, we can't very accurately tell what we're using in town because it takes also into account backwash. Part of the WaterSmart program is actually to install a good type of meter, a low flow, one of the refill flows on the outlet of the water plant. And that'll give us an accurate, and that will be hooked into the SCADA, so we record it continuously.
And then you could chart it by the minute, basically.
Exactly as we can plant.
Yeah, right. So now we have something that we can use for grant funding if we so choose to go that route. If a program.
If particularly professional programs announced,
Right.
it would be a good match project for gas tax dollars. Particularly that first phase project we've got referenced there. It would be it's within budgetary limitations.
Good.
Yeah.
Well, let's hope that the feds cough up.
Yeah.
Do we have something budgeted for this?
We have, not at this point, that we have to have a discussion about gas tax money use in particular, although we do have a reserve for water. And the question would be, how much do you want to take from that reserve when we've already had to dip into it for the dam project a little bit?
And we'll not use the A Avenue.
Yes. And that's where the money for the reservoir liner came from too, because we weren't successful in grant funding for that.
Right.
They mentioned the leak that we found, and that was the old emergency water system. Some of you know about this. And it's something that I thought was offline, disconnected, not a possibility. I never really thought about it. I knew the power was disconnected to it, so it was...
Water was still flowing through it.
Well, something happened. It wasn't originally. I think it might have frozen and broken inside there, inside one of the control valves. But we were losing in upwards of about 170,000 gallons a day.
I'd say 170,000 a day.
A day.
Oh, for how long?
10 years.
We know.
How long's it been out of commission?
Well, we've been keeping track at the water plant for a number of years now, the skating. And going back in that, our consumption hasn't changed drastically. So I'm thinking it happened before that came online. But you never wintered, it's locked, there's no power to it, nothing. It was actually when we started to do this process with them that all of a sudden they were asking about different things, and they mentioned that old intake down there, and geez, I wonder if that's maybe where.
Wow.
And I went and checked.
So that's why our midnight to 6 o'clock flows were,
Not
Yes.
different.
well, were high
Right.
compared to what one would expect
Yes.
as consumption.
Yeah.
And they're still a bit high, and we're still losing some water through it because we can't totally shut it off properly yet until the spring when we can dig it up outside and cap it off. We have to allow a little water to keep running through there so that it doesn't freeze and have a major rupture in there. But we've got plenty of water at the moment, so I'm not worried about losing a little bit through there.
Yeah.
Councillor Lane?
But just a comment, so that 170,000 gallons is the equivalent of about 80 households, so if you were thinking of doing any boundary expansions, you just found 80 households worth of water.
Just an observation, I didn't hear any discussion about the springs on the lower slopes of True Mountain, which are substantial in their ability to generate water, as you and I know when we went up and checked it. And McDonald Creek, we haven't given up our water license on McDonald Creek.
McDonald Creek was talked to them about, the springs we actually didn't.
Yeah.
But it's always definitely worth improving that.
Yeah.
That's absolutely. But it doesn't really, it won't feed the town.
Well, no, I'm just saying as the town grows, there's another source of pretty good water compared to Kemp Creek, or as an emergency situation in terms, if something happened at Kemp Creek, you would, with real severe water restrictions, at least have enough to fight a fire with, I think, because it's all hooked up to the gravity system. But I've often wondered about McDonald Creek, in terms of the summertime, and putting in some type of structure there, what that would cost, and provide, again, a safety situation in the summer. But anyway.
The topography is not great for McDonald Creek in that you have to climb out of a little bit of a canyon and over the hill, because it's got to go to the water treatment plant, not to...
Yeah, no, there's a bit of an issue there. Okay. Well, thank you, Glenn, for helping us through this, and I'm sure the adventure will begin.
Yeah.
Continue.
Okay.
Is it nice?
So, business item minutes, report from the administrator.
Okay, mind this out there, Public Works have been fairly occupied with snow removal. It's kind of a little milder now. Glenn is currently exploring the cost of acquiring some old sewer maintenance machinery from the city of Nelson. Again, that will be coming up in budget with a view to better preventing grease build-up in the system. We're hoping it's not going to be a hugely expensive acquisition, but given that our resident has been badly affected twice in 2 years now by a backup situation with grease, we're going to have to do something about the maintenance situation in that area.
Can I just ask a quick question? Is that, so are we inspecting businesses in town have grease traps on their businesses, and are we keeping track of that? Is that, should they, or is that part of what's the deal with that?
Health issue.
It's certainly an interesting topic worth exploring. I think we seem to have quite a bit of grease build up in part of the system at the lowest point. Rodding is certainly a maintenance option, but where the grease is coming from and how to reduce it, there really are some questions to ask. It's not a major, it's not a huge system.
Yeah, it's not hard to figure out.
I thought we were.
Yeah.
Did we not go through this not too long ago?
Yeah.
And we found that some people were complying and others weren't, and some didn't have any grease traps and refused to install them. And we were looking at legal options. Could we close them down? Could we shut off their connection to the sewer system? I mean, there was a bunch of work done on this, but typically it is a Department of Health job to do the inspections. But if they're not, I mean, we've had difficulties out at the golf course, and without the grease traps not being properly maintained and gone to great expense. If they're not maintained properly, they cause you all sorts of grief. And I don't know, maybe a reminder needs to go out to the restaurants in town that we're currently experiencing excessive loading in our sewer plant, and they have a primary source. It's not coming from residential houses, I don't think, unless people are flushing or cooking oil and stuff down there. So anyway, maybe a friendly reminder to do a better job.
And that is adversely affecting their fellow citizens
Yeah.
by doing
And
that.
then we might contemplate a sliding scale on fees. If you don't have a grease trap on your property, restaurant property, then your fees triple.
Okay.
Broadband, the CBBC inspected the building on January 10th. And they'll be coordinating with local contractors to provide a high-speed internet connection to the office in the next few weeks. Sure, I believe we're going to be here tomorrow, or at least on a day this week to test the circuit and get it to go live. So we're making some slow progress there, and starting to feel a little bit more optimistic that we'll get to the end there. Further to the request on January 7th, staff provide an average cost per square foot for running the Campbell building. I had a discussion with the deputy clerk, and we arrived at a figure of $3.90 per square foot per year. A full costing can be provided to council. The figure does not include mortgage debt servicing, so it's not a cheap building to run. Appointments, Susan Mulkey indicated that she would like to continue as village representative to Castle Area Regional Facilities, Recreation and Parks Service Commission.
I'll move that Susan be reappointed to Castle Area Regional Facilities Recreation Park Service Commission to represent the village of Castle.
Seconded by Councillor Hewitt. Discussion, all in favor? Motion passes.
I still haven't received a copy of the Chamber of Commerce's constitution as requested in December, but I do want to point out to Council that you are free to designate a specific member as liaison, as primary liaison to the Chamber for the village. Sitting on the board is unnecessary to perform that role and not recommended in a voting capacity unless the member of council is there. Well, basically, unless you're there in an ex officio capacity on the board, I wouldn't recommend it anyway. Training, I have a couple of recommendations there for training and travel, just to prepare for the year ahead. There is a EOC logistics course on February 19th. Stephanie Patience has indicated you're interested in attending.
I'll move that Stephanie Patience be approved for training and travel to Nelson for the course on February 19th.
Moved by Councillor Leaford, second by Councillor Lang. Discussion, all in favor? Motion passes.
And the other is that I am recommending that when the elections training comes out, Carol already had the training. Stephanie and I go and take the elections training.
Moved by Councillor Hewitt,
Second.
second by Councillor Leaford. Discussion, all in favor? Motion passes.
And just your important dates are there. Joan Chess is coming on the week of the 27th. I've still to firm up some times and dates for that. And I think she'll be here from the Monday through to the Wednesday. So we're going to have to try and find something that works for most of you. May not work for everybody. And also there's the Project Comeback event on January 23rd at JVH, I think starting at 3:30 p.m.
Okay. Now, let me see. So we are on notice of motion. So I wanted to make we're just making a notice of motion here, or is this?
I was your notice of motion.
Yeah,
for
that the village of Castle endorses the community plan for a public system of integrated early care and learning proposed by the Coalition of Child Care Advocates of BC and the Early Childhood Educators of BC. This plan has the potential to make a real difference for BC children, families, and communities. So this came out of one of the workshops I attended at UBCM. And I thought it was a worthwhile process to support. And if you did have a chance to look at the website, many communities have supported this and organizations. So I'd like to recommend the Village of Caslo adopt this resolution.
I move with just possibly one small amendment. It seems like the last sentence is not really part of the motion. Maybe it could be either put it at the beginning as a whereas or just not make part of the motion.
Okay, so can you make that change then?
Yeah.
That would be inconsistent with what other people have done, but they sent us the motion. Okay, all in favor?
But we're not actually making a motion, right?
Yes.
Yes, we are,
Okay.
with the amendment. I guess we should vote on the amendment first.
No, I mean, it's an original motion, you
Okay.
made, right? You can do whatever you want with it.
Well, who made the motion? You made the motion.
No.
No, I use the recommendation. I moved it with the suggestion that we.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Shoot. Okay, can you just give me a second here?
Read it, there's a village option. Do you want me to read it?
As in between that. So
Something like
instead-
that.
Just a joiner, because it does seem like that last sentence is sort of loose in there. It doesn't have any relevance to the motion.
Yeah, do we vote on it yet? No? Oh.
It's a second.
Well, I
Oh,
had
you have, you said.
but I just suggested that if the intent is to keep that last sentence, that we just use the word as in between the first part and the second, and then it's all in there.
Mhm.
I'll do it, yeah.
Okay, further discussion? Call a question, all in favor? Motion passes. Okay. Eagle Sculpture 4C. Did you want to talk to us anymore?
I believe one or more members of council were approached by Spring Shines, the sculptor, to relocate his eagle sculpture from the Live Art store to the courtyard of the Campbell building.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll move the motion.
Yeah, I'll second.
So moved by Councilor Hall, second by Councilor Leithwood. Discussion, all in favor? Motion passes. Okay, and 4D is strategic priorities.
council the draft based on feedback I received on priorities, and I've also put some, there's some staff input there under Public Works Administration in the Office for Operational Priorities. I'm using the format that you've been familiar with, which is it is a model that's being used in a number of communities. On the areas like the advocacy front, those are entirely kind of the areas that staff would have inferred from some of the recent motions over the last little while. The next 5 are broadband initiative, Kaslo River intake project, resolution of boundary extension application, zoning for shore waters, and Kaslo, Kaslo aerodrome potential partnerships.
I'll move that the final strategic priority chart for 2014 be adopted for operational communication purposes.
Second by Councillor Hewitt. Discussion? All in favor? Motion passes.
I'll move the second recommendation that the CEO be directed to implement a new annual report document to accompany the 2013 financial statements and help inform future strategic reviews.
Second? Second by Councillor Hewitt. Discussion? All in favor? Motion passes. Susan, I'm hitting this little X here, and it's taking me somewhere else. I don't.
Something has to happen with the system. It's different.
Oh, because they just ran
Mine
right
keeps on cutting up.
I have to keep going back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I have to keep signing up.
No, I have to.
So what did you press to get to this screen?
There's, it just says, it's got the wording up above, so you.
Yeah, I saw that, yeah.
Yeah, you've got several instances, so you'll want that out.
Okay.
And then that's, yeah.
Okay.
So then it's right from there. You just got to remember to close as your.
Yeah, well, that's what I was trying to do. Okay. Correspondence. MKBLG, second call for resolutions.
Move to receive.
Move to receive.
Second by Councillor Hewitt. Discussion, all in favor? Motion passes. Now, so what's the deadline on this thing?
I believe it's in February.
Monday, February 10th.
If you were, it means if you were bringing something forward, you'd have until end of January, your next meeting. Yes.
Yeah. So councillors might prepare for that in the next meeting. Okay. All right.
I'll move the entry for receipt.
Moved by Councillor Leithwood. Is there a seconder? Second. Second by Councillor Hall. Discussion. Councillor Lang.
Yeah, on the subject, just give me a sec here. On the subject of the fire hall, all I can say is that I find the responses to be flippant. Self-serving, and I guess the bottom line for me is I'm really disappointed in the regional district's performance to date. I attended an on-site meeting last week, and quite frankly, it got ugly. There was a confrontation between a local citizen and Terry Swan. I wasn't involved, other than I was standing right next to him when they went at it. And anyway, just for the record, I'd like to be on record as saying that not happy with it, but at this point in time, I can't recommend any further course of action. I think it's the horses bolted the barn, and whatever we end up with is what we end up with.
Any other discussion, councillors? Councillor Leithwood?
you know, I mean, is part of the problem, you think, that we're not getting enough feedback or enough progress reports or whatever it is from them? Or do you think that we need more communication with them more regularly?
Well, what I took away from the meeting was that they're tired of communicating with the village. They're tired of people complaining about how this project is being handled, and they've chosen a course of action, and they're going to stick to it, no matter high water. And any further complaining, whining, or it is going to fall on deaf ears. So you can take it, and take that for what it's worth. I personally have nothing more to say in terms of the discussion. I think they've certainly missed the boat on a number of opportunities to save money on this project, and whether it comes back to haunt them at the end of the day, I guess anybody's guess. I'm not even going to speculate as to where this is going to end up. But, so that's my take. So I don't know, writing more letters, I couldn't recommend that at this moment.
I don't think it's necessarily waiting more letters, and the fact that, you know, it may be the regional district's baby, but we are still fiscally responsible to the citizens of Castle, and we did indicate them in support of the regional district, you know, what was happening with the fire. So we are the ones that do get asked the questions when we're not saving the money that we was indicated that we would be able to save this project. So.
I'm really disappointed. And I supported this thing based on a minimum of a 30% reduction in the architect's approach to this rather extravagant fire hall. And my sense is I'm waiting for phase 2. I can understand lockup. There's a lot of things there, but after the lockup occurs, I think the village should take a very strong stand on what happens in that building. Now, whether or not we have any latitude to do that, I'm not sure, but I just want to be on the written record in terms of issues around, is this utilitarian or is it a fire hall which represents excesses for our community? Because that was the discussion around the community. Once lockup was achieved, the village would be significantly involved in cost reductions on completion of the building. So I'm trying to be patient here and wait until lockup is complete and then see what gets, because I think that's the point where it gets beyond the architects. The architects have cost us an awful lot of money, which I think was really not as well executed as what it might have been. So I concur with Rob's initial statements, but I think when it gets to lockup, that's when we as a council really need to take a serious look at how much volunteer labor. Maybe local citizens don't want to be involved, and that's fine, but the commitment was that local citizens would be involved. Okay.
Now you can call the question.
That's, yeah, because we ran, like, we should have only been discussing whether or not to receive the documents, not pontificate on it.
Yeah.
So.
Discussion, all in favor? Motion passes. Okay. Did you want to talk to this, Neil?
Director Shedrick, I'm just providing this for guys' information regarding the land use strategic plan.
Well, aren't we on the West Kootenai?
Oh, sorry, I meant one thing in there. Sorry.
Maybe I could, Andy and I had a discussion with Jim Gustafson concerning the fact that he'd been retained by the municipality of Castlegar to look at a long-term strategic plan. And he was going to prepare a report based on the comments that he received by interviewing the elected officials that are on the board concerning this matter. And I think this provides some background to the work that he's undertaking to help the board focus on the next. How do I put this? On the next phase, I guess, of where we're going in our area in terms of a hospital. Any questions? Stay tuned, and I'm sure Jim will bring this forward at a hospital board meeting, but it hasn't come before the hospital board yet. Any questions? Okay.
I'll move for receipt.
Second?
Second.
Second by Councilor Holland. Discussion, all in favor? Motion passes.
I'll move E for receipt.
Moved by Councilor Leithwood, second by Councilor Hewitt. Discussion, all in favor? Motion passes.
I'll move after receipt with the CO suggesting us contacting Mr. McLeod and advising about the provision of internet maintenance. What is recommended there.
Seconder? Second by Councilor Lang. Discussion, all in favor? Motion passes. And 5G. So my suggestion here was that staff estimate the construction cost and suggest how much extra to annual taxation a constructed washroom would be, and advise Mr. Eklund accordingly. And I just wanted to modify not just the annual tax of the constructed cost, the maintenance cost as well. And then that the committee of the whole should discuss what is required of the farmers market lease of the space in 2014 and explore whether the relocation of Bimini Park might be a suitable solution for a trial period of 1 year.
Well, we tried asking that before, they didn't want to move.
Well, that's where the washrooms are. Councilor Lang?
I'm concerned about this issue, and I almost feel like it should be moved in camera. Because there are some legal, there's potential for some legal action here, is there not? Like, could we be sued? Well, what these other languages,
Mr. Eklund made intimations that he didn't want to take legal action against the village around this issue. I don't believe there's a real basis for him to bring a suit. I mean, there would be suits all over the province if commercial businesses were allowed to sue their municipalities for not providing public washroom. That's kind of a big issue, but
You could move it to the next encounter if you wish.
that's our bag, you know.
well, I realize that, but still, I think it warrants further discussion, and I think that discussion should take place in camera.
Would you like to make a recommendation then?
I recommend that we move the subject to Mr. Erickson's letter into in camera.
Is there a seconder? Councilor Hewitt?
I just wondered, did we not have a motion on the table that we were dealing with? Or am I incorrect?
No, nobody moved.
Nobody moved it, okay. I thought somebody had.
So that's the recommendation. Is there a seconder? For a third time, second?
I'll second for a discussion.
Second for discussion. Councilor Leithwood.
So two questions. First, do you believe that it is a in-camera item? It has to be the lower.
No, having read it, I didn't believe it was. If there is a concern, it can certainly be looked there for some sort of discussion.
Councilor Holland?
I vote against referring to in camera. I think this is really a hot burning public issue. I don't know that doing something like that might not just amplify the concerns around it, because it is a big issue.
Mhm.
And I don't think that the references to court action were, I don't take them too seriously. It's something that's in the public domain around something like this, so. I prefer we didn't move into camera, but at the same time, I think that we do need to have a detailed discussion about this. And I'd be, if this motion fails, I'll make a subsequent motion.
Can I ask
Councilor
a
Easley.
question? Could you find out if there's a standard with Interior Health or whatever it is for proximity to washing? If we do have a washing within the block.
Okay, I think we're moving on.
When we have to.
We should take
Yeah.
a, we should wrap this issue up.
Further discussion? All in favor?
Doesn't seem like anybody's doing this, okay.
You got to call for opposed votes, Mayor, and this has been one of my
Opposed votes.
issues for the
Opposed.
whole town balance council is you're not calling for opposed votes.
Yeah.
On every vote,
Those
you should
opposed?
be doing that.
Yeah, okay. Motion fails.
So I'd like to try a subsequent motion, and that is here that we refer this to committee of whole for, to discuss. What's required for farmer markets lease.
So that's what's written here then?
Yeah, committee of the whole should discuss, I want to make a recommendation to refer to committee of the whole the discussion of what is required for the farmer's market lease of the space of 2014, explore whether their relocation of Lincoln Park might be a suitable solution.
Seconder? Second by Councilor Leathwood. Discussion? Call the question? All in favor? Opposed?
And thank you, Mr. Mayor. And if we could, I think we should inform, who does farmer's market?
Well, the two related,
Yeah, we'll just give them a heads up that it's going to committee hall, so that they don't, just in case they miss it, I think.
Did we move that first one about estimating the cost? We should get the cost, because we have talked about this quite a bit, about getting all the costs, so we should actually get the cost.
Would you like to make that recommendation?
I will move that we ask Public Works foreman to estimate construction costs and maintenance costs of a washroom in that area.
Second?
For discussion.
Second, Councilor Lane for discussion.
Did we not already do this?
I
That was 6 months ago?
Well, I don't think we got the cost though.
Yeah, we did. So maybe that information could be brought forward again, but I don't think we should ask staff to go through the exercise a second time.
No, did we ask them about what the maintenance would be?
I don't think we ever determined who would maintain them.
Well, I mean, it still is part of the cost of it. So we should find that out somewhere. And if we have any information, great. We need to have all of it. So we could just amend the recommendation to say that we look at the costs, estimated costs, and project maintenance costs. If we can, to get the total cost of this.
So we're amending the, or is this a new recommendation?
No, we're just amending it. Instead of asking staff to estimate the construction cost, we'll ask staff to inform us of the construction cost, if we already have it, but we still need maintenance costs.
Just desperately trying to get back to where I was.
Yes, yeah, overall.
Yeah.
Whatever. Any further discussion? Call the question, all in favor? Motion passes. Start with the guy and then. Oh, okay. All right. Good thinking. I've got a problem. Have you guys noticed this stuff is slower than usual?
it's not doing too bad. I may get a little blanks every once in a while.
My machine is always slow, and I'm not noticing any difference at all.
Oh, no.
Yeah, well, that was, it just because
The water's
there's so
getting
many
slowly
comments in
warmer
there.
and more.
Oh,
That's
okay.
why.
Yeah, okay.
So, thank you guys have just been brought down to my level.
And it took a long time.
Okay. So then we're going to go to let's see, circulation package.
Move to receive.
Moved by Councilor Hall to receive, second by Councilor Hewitt. Discussion. Call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion passes. Okay, now. Staff report, committee action items, Rex in the report. Is that where we're at? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
I'll move the first recommendation that a letter of support be drafted to support the Kaslo Institute's proposal to host the 2014 BC Rural Network Rural Summit. Have these already been moved?
No, we
Through committee level finance.
Oh, okay. I guess, yeah, we'll do one.
I'll second.
Discussion. Call a question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion passes.
I'd like to move that a proposal for the restoration and renovations of the exterior of the City Hall be prepared to a total project value of up to $200,000, potentially comprised of Parks Canada funding, Heritage BC funding, gas tax funding, Columbia Basin Trust funds, and internal funding.
Moved by Councilor Hall and seconded by Councilor Hewitt. Discussion. Call a question. All in favor? Motion passes. Opposed?
I'll move the next one, that a related leverage proposal with a total project value up to $300,000 for City Hall be prepared for submission to the Columbia Basin Trust.
Second.
Discussion. Call a question. All in favor? Motion passes.
I'll move that third parties interested in additional functional space inside or on the City Hall property be invited to work with the village on finding additional funding solutions for both the main floor and courtroom that conform to known character-defining elements in the statement of significance.
Second.
Moved by Councilor Hall and seconded by Councilor Hewitt. Discussion. Call a question. All in favor? Motion passes. Opposed? Oh, should have been the other way around, I guess. Okay.
I'll move the motion that expired or expiring leases in the Kimball Memorial Center only be renewed for this calendar year at the rate currently negotiated, or that the village continues on a month-to-month basis with these tenants for 2014. And further, that those tenants be informed of imminent changes coming in 2015 in terms of building service improvements and likely resultant changes to future agreements.
Moved by Councilor Hewitt. Oh.
Second.
Seconded by Councilor Hewitt. Discussion. Call a question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion passes. Is there anything else that? Okay, so we are now
7B.
7B. Okay, I will leave
So for the sake of the public, there should be clear why he's leaving the room. Maybe CO.
Yeah, I'll basically read it out.
No.
This is very slow. The mayor has requested that the unexpended amount of $1,588.23 under 2013 council expenses be used to reimburse personal UBCM expenses incurred in excess of his own 2013 expense allocation.
And since I'm acting mayor, I am acting as chair at this point. Councillor Lang.
I would like to move that.
Okay, moved by Councillor Lang,
I'll second.
seconded by Councillor Leithwood. Any discussion? Councillor Mullen?
Yeah, I'm going to, as much as I believe that what the mayor's done is a good work on part, I'm going to vote against the motion. We as councilors, we have budgets to operate within. And his request is about 135% of what he was allocated. And I think it sort of demonstrates a fairly large fiscal responsibility to run that far over budget. Secondly, the reason that there's unexpended funds in that account is because our councilors at the table we work pretty hard at trying not to expend the total budget and save the ratepayers of Kaslo some money. It's one of the small things we can do. And in fact, what that does is that completely null and voids any efforts that councilors have made to save money on this front, one of the areas where we can. And I think that would be a shame to do that, because what that does is, in effect, avoid those efforts, and it also will create an atmosphere where spend it all as fast as possible and possibly ask for more if there's any left at the end. And I don't think it sets a good precedent for the way we operate here. It would be better if we stuck our budgets and were prudent and act responsibly and look down the road. I mean, we can all this is all laid out well in advance. And I believe it's important that we follow our procedures by law and our reimbursement bylaws, and that we ask council in advance for whatever expenditures we want to make, and council has an opportunity to decide whether they're correct or not. Finally, if we're going to allow councilors to come back and retroactively request reimbursement for expenses, then I think we should all have the opportunity to do that. I know that I can speak for myself. I know that other councilors have done the same thing around this issue, that I went back and did a quick scan of my meetings that I could have claimed for village business, but I made an effort. I changed my schedule. I scheduled doctor's appointments on days when there was meetings to attend, and I made up as many opportunities as I could to save the ratepayers of Kaslo money. There was 12 trips over the course of the year, and I did a quick calculation on the amount that I didn't claim. It comes into $1,487. So I'm going to suggest that if we're going to go back and retroactively claim expenses, that I'd be allowed to give them the opportunity to retroactively claim expenses I didn't file, trying to save the taxpayers some money. And but I'll go also on to say that because I believe that money that's unexpended is taxpayer money, that I would, if I was allowed to file retroactively, that I would take that $1,487.73 and donate it to the City Hall Restoration Fund, because I believe it is taxpayer money.
Any further discussion? Councillor Lang?
Only to say that we had this discussion at the COTW meeting in December, which you weren't present for, and one of the issues that came up was that there was unexpended monies within that budget. So we're not going over budget. Whether everybody should be allowed to claim against those unexpended funds, that certainly an interesting question. But I'm going to go with voting in favor of this motion, because that's more or less what we agreed to do at that meeting in December.
Councillor Collins?
I wasn't able to attend that meeting, but I believe the person that was speaking to this was the mayor.
No, he did actually leave the room after a period of time. Would that be the correct?
After the discussion.
After the discussion and the original vote.
Well, that is a huge conflict of interest, and obviously it's had some sway on council, that's an illegal. It has no sway.
It didn't sway me in one way or the other.
Well, it's
I mean, it was an awkward moment. There's no doubt about it, and it wasn't handled correctly. But you can't really point at one person and say, "Well, he was clearly in the wrong there." I think we all kind of bear a little bit of the blame for not grabbing the bull by the horns and saying, wait a minute, this discussion has to stop. But nevertheless, I don't think it was a matter of influencing council one way or the other.
Councillor Leafer?
Okay, well, first of all, it's not actually the rest of council's responsibility.
Absolutely not.
It's the members' responsibility to declare community interest. But the other, I mean, when we had the discussion, we did have information in front of us that said that, you know, everyone's expenses were laid out. There was money left. Not all councillors had spent all their money. Some had overspent. So we did have a discussion based on the information that we had at that time. Which again, I mean, I agree with what you say, but I also agree with what Councillor Lane says. And it's not a huge amount of money. I think this is the first time that we did actually change our council expenses to reflect how we did it last year. I think this year when we do the budget, we do need to tighten up on that and, you know, find a different system or whatever, so that we don't at the end of the year go with this. Because I do agree that we all understood we had a certain amount of money, but I also agree that if it is in the interest of the village and somebody has incurred expenses, I don't have a problem with giving them those extra expenses.
I guess I'll weigh in. I also agree on both sides, because it is, you know, is it appropriate to spend in excess of your budget and knowingly do so? Because we all sat down and discussed what our personal budgets would be for travel, and some of us chose to reduce those requests to reduce the burden on the taxpayer, because we were facing a large deficit budget last year. So we did the best we could. So it does make it very difficult. And, you know, it's not that the travel that the mayor did in excess of what he was reimbursed for was for purposes that weren't in the village's interests. It's just, I guess, the handling of it and the being able to go back and request something in excess of the agreed upon figures. So,
Well, I guess my final statement is, and I'll make this announcement to the ratepayers of Kaslo, there's no way I'm going to bend over backwards to save them money if it's going to create inequity between councilors around who claims what expenses. I'm not going to, and I worked quite hard at saving the ratepayers the money, and now I'm seeing it's going to go to council money anyway. So what's the point? So I'll be the first one to get my budget mark next year, because it was, you know, like I said, there was a dozen meetings that I attended over the course of the year where I changed my schedule, and I finagled to do, you know, and I felt like it was worthwhile effort that I was doing, and it wasn't that inconvenient for me to change my doctor's or do whatever. I mean, I take that as something that I, at least in a small measure, I can have control of helping the village save money, whether it's the fire hall or our expenses or whatever. That's where we should go with this. It's very marginal whether it's even. I'm not sure that it totally conforms to the bylaw to have these retroactive expenses come back like that, but I think I read it carefully, and I don't find any real super firm language around that. But the intent, as I understand it, is that we ask for reimbursement of an expense in advance of making the expenses. That's it. But I'm not, and also let me say, council, this is not a banner I'm going to fly under. I'm going to vote against the motion, and we're going to move on and get on with the business. That's it.
any further discussion? I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Thank you. Motion passes. Well, yeah, for that one. No, I could have voted opposed, and then it would have been a dead deal.
That's one.
I have.
I thought you vote to break it.
I make it vote all the time, but they
Well,
make it
select.
vote all the time. So,
This is sort of popped up, but it's under fair form the next time.
Yeah. Okay, staff report, verbal health select committee membership.
Yeah, there was a meeting at lunchtime today, a planning meeting for the Health Select Committee. The individuals you see there, my recommendation, have been identified as the members for 2014. I believe that Warren Taylor has, since lunchtime, accepted to serve on it. Director Shadrack has indicated that if the village is willing to support the committee's activities to allow $3,000, he will match it from his funds.
Yeah, I'll move the first recommendation. The following persons be appointed.
Seconder, second by Councilor Hewitt. Discussion, call a question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion passes.
I'll move the second recommendation with some kind of, indication of how the funds are spent in the year. That's what we do with other groups that we do.
Councilor Hewitt?
I'll second that, and this will be a committee of council, so the funds will flow through
Yes,
our.
so we were quite detailed in their terms of reference for that.
Okay, well, I don't need it then. I wasn't sure if it was going to go through council or not.
So moved by Councilor Leafwood. Call a question. All in favor?
I want to have a bit of discussion. Can I ask what they're planning on, what kind of activities are for $6,000?
My understanding at this point is that they are wanting some support for meetings.
For meetings?
Yeah, and I think there are going to be a number of larger scale meetings and events over the course probably of the first 6 months concerning the ER issue, the recruitment of doctors issue, and so on.
Excuse me?
Can we talk about the recruitment then?
Well, the committee is, like, the whole goal here is to get money. You know, like there's $20,000 sitting out there that would be available to us as this would be available to the committee. So I think the first order of business is rounding up the money to move ahead. And so the $6,000, I know that there was an initial request for $300 in order to bring this consultant up here to talk about doctor recruitment. You know, and like the committee is unprepared to, they're getting burned out. I mean, they can't afford to raise $300 to bring this person up at this point in time. So this is, based on Neil's advice that we need a budget for items like that. They need to hire a secretary. They need to coordinate various subcommittees. But there will be there will be some type of a plan here. The idea, like we said, the committee existed in name only. Now we've appointed people. Now they go through the terms of reference, and because it's a very dynamic situation, we really don't know what Interior Health are going to do, but we know April 1st is coming. Yeah.
Committees like this, as I've experienced elsewhere, can be extremely active committees, and they can be quite involved in raising funds through public processes. It could be, if it's more than they need, well, it could be unexpended monies pursued to, anything they do spend will have to be pursued to our own policies as well. I'm simply suggesting a number of this size just to ensure that they have some resources this year in what seems to be very much a year where it may be required.
Further discussion? Councilor Holland?
I'm a little concerned that so far what I've heard mentioned is a $300 consultant and 6 meetings, so it'd be like $1,000 a meeting for 6 months. I mean, I'm having a hard time understanding, and I know we're fixing to go into budget, and we're going to be dealing with some hard numbers, and I guess this is going to get reviewed again at budget. I got a feeling. While we've got council focused on this issue, I'd like to have some kind of justification on the scale of the expense, not the. I think it's a good allocation. I'm trying to wrap my mind around that kind of money unless they're bringing in some really high people. So unfortunately, I hate to get really sidetracked on the issue, but I was going to present this at my verbal report, but now it seems like the time to do it. So if I could, if council doesn't mind me going on a small diversion.
Anybody? I'd say go ahead.
It's not yet, is it, shall we table this motion until can we table it until we hear what?
Well, you've got a resolution on the
Right.
Table.
Right.
So you need to table it so we can discuss something else.
So then I'll move to table the motion that's currently on the floor until after Councillor Wallace presents his new information.
I'll second.
Discussion, all in favor?
Okay, I'm just a little confused. How do we table a motion that we've already moved and seconded, and move and second another motion?
You can go back to the original motion. You don't have to come here. This is just some information that's.
No, yeah, I understand that. I just don't know if that's the right process, that you table a motion when you're first and second. I mean,
Yeah, technically you should amend it.
yeah, or
Okay.
could we say that we would amend the motion to say that we will support the $3,000 given a
You could refer to
breakdown of expenses or a budget or something.
budget would be nice. That's what I'd like to see.
So the first motion passed, right? We're now in a second motion that was moved and seconded. Do we want to amend that motion then?
Well, we can amend it to say that we would approve $3,000 pending a budget from the committee. Or an acceptable budget.
Councillor Knight.
I think we're getting on thin ice here. There was a lot of reluctance in this group to engage with council in the first place for this exact reason, is that we would start meddling and start trying to twist and contort what they were allowed to do and weren't allowed to do. I think these people have worked very hard. I think they deserve our support. It looks like we may be on the verge of a breakthrough, and I think $3,000 is a pittance compared to what the results could be if our ER closes and we're unable to pursue doctor recruitment. I think we should fully support this initiative and without any strings attached.
It's a $6,000 expenditure. $6,000.
It's a $3,000.
No, it's based on a matching fund from Area D.
Well, the Area D can hash it out at their meetings, but we're talking about budgeting $3,000 from the municipal budget for 2014 to support this group, and I'm all for it.
Well, it won't be paid unless the Area D director matches.
Well, if he chooses not to match, then we'll revisit.
Councillor.
I don't think requesting a budget breakdown is disrespecting or not appreciating. We all know how hard they worked. And I know that they put in a lot of hours, and there was a request before for funds. We have other groups that we do give money to with stipulations to it. So I don't really see that asking for a budget to, I mean, we give money to the Bearware, and we ask them to come at the end of the year to tell us where they spent the money. We give money to the Chamber of Commerce with stipulations that it's only spent on certain amounts of money. And everybody works hard doing the things that they do. So I don't really see that requesting a budget is, it's not saying we're not going to support them. We're just requesting a
The
budget.
CAO has a comment here.
I encourage council not to get too caught up in the figure here, because there was a very brief discussion earlier today about what the budgetary ask of the committee should be. It wasn't a significant, it wasn't a long thought out discussion. It was basically, let's allocate a number to this committee to fund it for this year. They're not hung up on a specific figure, the people involved at the moment. However, the area director for AD has regularly indicated that he's willing to go as high as $3,000 in match funding at his budget, for approval at his budget in March.
Councillor Lang.
I don't have a problem with what Councillor Leith was saying, is if there would, at the end of the fiscal year, supply us with a budget of how the money was spent, so that if there's a continuation of this process, we can review what they spent the money on and decide whether we want to go forward into a second.
Mm-hmm. I'm fine with that.
I don't mind some accountability.
Yeah.
I don't know that it's practical. It's practical for them to tell us at this point in time exactly how they're going to spend it in the county. So an after the fact thing is fine with me.
Further discussion?
Can I just ask, what motion are we actually voting on now? 'Cause
You're still on the original.
there was one, okay, so there was some move to amend, so I wasn't sure whether that actually happened.
So we're back to that $3,000 be budgeted to support the activities of the Health Select Committee over 2014 on the understanding that it will be matched by the Area D RDCK Director. And it was moved by Councillor Leithwood, seconded by Councillor Lang. Further discussion. Can I call the question? All in favor? Opposed? Motion passes. Did I miss something here?
No,
I didn't.
the Rob's hand was still up and asked for opposed.
I'm so slow getting it done.
Okay, well, I'll make a subsequent motion that we ask for a breakdown of the budget at the end of the term.
How about we say at the end of the fiscal year or something, because this committee, unfortunately, does not have an end date. If you read the terms of reference, it's kind of open that way. The terms of reference are pretty, 3
Okay.
pages.
It says over 2014.
Yeah, well, yeah, so
Okay.
that would be okay.
Okay,
Okay.
so that was my motion, to ask for a breakdown of the budget at the end of the fiscal year.
Moved by Councillor Leithwood, seconded by Councillor Gill.
For discussion.
For
I just
discussion.
think that we will have it as part of our reporting, because the money will, at least our 3,000 will flow through the village reporting, so it's somewhat redundant, I think, to ask for a report from
Right.
staff.
I keep forgetting that it's going through the, yeah, okay.
The indication is that Director Shadrack has, I suppose, can change his mind on this. The indication that we got today was that if all goes well, he would provide his half to the village.
Okay, yeah, sorry, I forgot that it was going to go through the village.
So do you want to withdraw your recommendation then?
Well, we vote on it and it'll,
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Can I call the question?
Yeah.
All in favor? Opposed?
okay,
Motion fails.
sorry.
Okay. We're on 7D, is that correct? Okay.
Yeah, I'll move to adopt the terms of reference to the 6th meeting.
Second by Councillor Lang. Discussion. Call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion passes.
Oh, that's,
The camera?
no,
The tape?
no, that's the fire department radio.
Oh,
What?
It's fire department radio, because is deputy chief in his office.
So we're on 7E. Director's report, verbal.
Yeah. So I'll start off with the item that I was going to raise in the previous discussion. That has to do with the directors of the hospital board that received this document. So I'm going to forward it on to, I think I sent you an electronic copy today. And I'm going to, I'll read this real quick and then I'll make a motion. It's just a paragraph. So the Interdivisional Strategic Council Recruitment and Retention Steering Committee, identifying best practice, roles and responsibilities together, implementing priorities identified by all the partners. The background is the Interdivisional Strategic Council, consisting of 7 divisions of family practice, interior health, and the General Practice Services Committee, which is the BCMA and the Ministry of Health, has identified recruitment and retention of family physicians as a priority. During the 2013 Recruitment and Retention Steering Committee conducted a recruitment environmental scan across interior health. To build on the results of the environmental scan, the steering committee came together with Partners Regional Hospital District to improve systematic approach to physician recruitment and retention across the interior health region by establishing key partnerships across participating organizations. Any actions of the steering committee are to support and remove barriers to local recruitment. So this has been sent around by the chair of the hospital board, Chair Rockfall, and it asks for input, and it's part of an overall work that the steering committee is doing at the BCMA and the Ministry of Health and Interior Health level. And we're getting direct access to put input on the table for that. So some of the actions of what the health committee could do would be to take this and move this forward. And I think this is going to do a heck of a lot to do a higher level support of what we're trying to do at the local level too. So I think it might, and it's fairly new information, I think it might have some effect on what these guys are going to do. So there's a copy of that. So I already gave it, but there's a copy if you guys want to send an electronic copy to.
Could I suggest we refer this to the select stand?
That's my motion, is that we refer that to the health committee. Yeah.
I'll second that.
Discussion. All in favor? Motion passes. Opposed? Oh.
You're getting there.
The next, I just want to report that on January 20th, I'll be participating in a meeting with Dave Hillary and Andy Shadrack, Director Shadrack, around the Kootenai Conservation Program. Kootenai Conservation Program is an organization, society that operates, nonprofit organization operates in East Kootenays, partially funded by the Columbia Valley Conservation Fund, which is a service of the regional district. And so we're going to be discussing how we might be able to bring or create it. Andy is invited them to come over and do a presentation on the possibility of creating a similar organization on this side of the lake. And it would be dealing with a lot of conservation issues and other things like fire interface and other issues around the conservation fund. I think it's a really interesting program. They've done great success over in the East Kootenays, and so we've got a good model to build on. So I will be reporting back on you that meeting. I've got a paper here. You can just give you a little link into that if you're more interested in it. The second, I attended the meeting on the Kootenai Lake Partnership. It's one of those meetings I'm talking about that I went to declare expenses on. That is moving forward, and there was a meeting today, and I was informed by Sangita that in fact the Village of Castle is already considered quote-unquote a membership through participation with the regional district. And this is really going to link closely into by being more active, by being an active participant in the partnership. I'm starting this meeting today. I didn't get notified quick enough. That will support what we're going to be doing on our foreshore zoning and shoreline stuff. And so the model is over in Slocan Lake, they've already done their shoreline studies. And the Kootenai Lake Partnership on this side is moving towards doing that. So now we'll be an active participant. We were the only jurisdiction on Kootenai Lake that wasn't actively participating. And I stood up and thrown my hat in anyway. We will be from now on. So there's a report on that if you guys want to get some background on that. And that's about it.
Thank you for that verbal report. Any other verbal reports? Councilor Leafwood? Councillor Lang? Councillor Hewitt? Moving on. Bylaws, anticipation of revenue bylaw, first.
So I'll move bylaw 1149 for first reading it, first time by content.
Second.
Second by Councillor Leafoot. Discussion, call the question, all in favor? Motion passes.
I'll move that we read bylaw 1149, the second and third time by title. And I guess for the benefit of the gallery, it's a bylaw for being a bylaw to provide for the borrowing of money in anticipation of revenue. So it's basically to provide bridge funding until taxation comes in early July.
I'll second.
Moved by Councillor Hewitt, second by Councillor Leafoot. Discussion, call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion passes. All right. On to the nines. BC Mayor's Caucus.
I'll move for discussion.
Moved by Councillor Leafoot for discussion. Second? Councillor Lang seconds.
You know, I guess if we're going to look at how we're going to fund council expenditures this year, then, you know, whatever we do approve from now on, we need to keep that in mind if we're going to put a ceiling on what each council member can attend. Or,
Can I ask a question?
Councillor Holland.
Was this a request for reimbursement of expenses, or is just, you just let us know where you're going?
No, request for reimbursement of expenses.
Oh, okay.
oh,
It's not, I didn't see a motion.
well, it's not till April 23rd then, isn't it?
Well, it's April 22nd, 25th. You have to register here very quickly. I think.
Right, you're not getting reimbursed. You want to go.
Yeah, but you have to make a motion that it be approved.
No, I know that.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
So I'm looking
reimbursement
for
usually
approval.
means we're expensive, we're going to go back to.
Yeah, I'm looking for.
Yeah. Yeah, and I know
Okay.
that, but what I'm saying
Yeah.
is that if we're going to look at a ceiling on council expenditures, then we have to be aware of what we've already spent before we ratify our budget. Because if we're going to put, $3,000 again, and then you're going to spend $1,000 going to this, then that's going to affect what you have left when you go to attend other things. And then we won't run into the same problem we had this year of people coming forward with wanting expenses at the end of the year. That's,
So the motion is there a motion?
that we approve for him to go.
Well,
Yeah.
I would like a more clear motion. It should have the little standard clause in there with usual expenses.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't say all that, but that's always how we do the motions.
Oh, no, I think it's important to include specifically what it's about, because I wasn't aware that he was asking for reimbursement on this.
Call the question. All in favor? Motion passes. And I would like to attend the Council of Forest Industries convention April 2nd and 3rd with required expenses.
Okay.
Councilor Leafoot?
I'm just trying to, so what benefit would that, I mean, I can understand the mayor's caucus. I'm wondering what benefit to the village that would be.
We have a community forest. We have a member on the board of the community forest. This is about forestry.
But wouldn't then the community forest member board go and report to us rather than the village?
This isn't an invitation. This is an invitation to mayors. And what's interesting about it, they pay the accommodation and the conference fee. It's a networking opportunity to talk to other mayors concerning what issues they're facing in terms of forest policy and how it affects their communities. Councilor Hall.
So if they're paying for your fees, what are you asking for?
Travel, because everything else is dealt with.
Well, but you're going to UBCM, correct? This is at the same time as UBCM?
No, this is April 2nd and 3rd.
There's the AKBLG. Yeah, that's in late April, and it's in Crest.
Oh, it's April 9th,
Councilor Lane?
Yeah, it would be helpful in crafting the motion to know that you're basically only asking for money for gas and not accommodation, food, and so on and so.
Yeah, well, that's why I sent the document here that explains that.
So where are we at with this one?
Well, nobody, I just asked a question about what the benefits of the village are.
We have a motion?
No, but yeah, if you were approving it to your travel expenses only.
Okay.
Pursuant to municipal policy.
Well, I'll put a motion on the table that we reimburse the mayor for travel expenses only to attend this conference.
One second.
Moved by Councilor Lang, second by Councilor Leathwood. Discussion. Call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion passes.
I can't help but ask, it's sort of a, if I was to put in I wonder if council would entertain me attending the Jazz Festivals Canada conference, because the tourism and community. Sorry, I couldn't avoid that.
If you read down the document, it says name and title, local government complimentary, so it's not costing $350.
Yeah.
And last year was really successful in terms of the number of mayors that interacted with the forest industry to explain, to get into the impacts that forest policy is having on their communities. And I got some pretty strong views on, the log market and the way in which our community is suffering because of the closure of the Meadow Creek sawmill, and those are the types of things that get discussed. Anyway, okay.
So can I make a motion that we refer discussion of, to the committee of the whole? Because I think, about what people attend. Because I think it's a valid question to ask what the benefit to the village things are. And, we kind of just come up with the amount of money and we sort of pick and choose the things. But I think we do need to see the benefit to what we're doing and why, if we are going to be responsible to the taxpayer for what we're spending.
Okay. So 9C, Falcon sign permit.
I'll move approval of the sign change.
I'll second.
Moved by Councilor Holland, second by Councilor Leathwood. Discussion. Call a question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion passes. We're on 9D, RDCK Director Work Plan.
So, I don't have a motion other than I wanted to ask for council's input. I'm sorry, I forget the deadline on this, when we were asking for it. Was, just wondering if we've got time to go to committee of the whole for discussion.
Not according to
You've
your email.
got till the next board meeting, which is this
Okay,
week.
which board meeting? So, we want to be listing our priority projects or initiatives that we want to address with the regional district. I'd suggest one would be boundary expansion. Another would be the facilitation of the moving forward on the Kootenai Lake Stewardship Partnership. And if there are other issues that probably fire interface, those three issues, if there's other issues that council would identify that I would represent as far as the priority setting work plan request.
Just a comment, I noted here, and you got an invite to go to this meeting on the 22nd of January to discuss plans around, I would say, collaboration and integration of services. That's the way I understood it. Maybe could you explain it a little bit more?
This one's a little bit challenging for me to explain as well, because it changed a lot from its inception until they settled on a date. Initially, this was SLOCAN, I believe, wanted to talk between the CAOs about the potential of pooling resources around the chief financial officer position amongst a number of communities. It's morphed into something that I would call a little bit more political in nature, to talk about the pooling of resources more generally and how to interact with the regional district and larger municipalities to get benefit, whether it's municipal finances, whether it's grant applications and so on and so on. The meeting's been held at the RDCK offices, but it's not an RDCK meeting. It's been pushed by a couple of the smaller municipalities. But Brian Carruthers, I believe, will be in attendance.
We're on the work plan item? No?
Didn't we, or?
Yes, but the mayor was making reference to this as a collaboration.
Yeah, it's a part of the regional district's work plan in terms of, how regional district will collaborate with municipalities possibly to provide services of mutual benefit. And it was interesting because Mayor Dulius offered.
I don't think that's what we're talking about. This is a work plan. This is a work plan that the regional district has asked municipal directors and rural directors to submit projects or initiatives that you want to see the regional district work on. So they're going to take that information and they'll make that part of their strategic planning or priority setting. So right now what we're doing is we're submitting issues and then they've asked it to be flushed out a little bit. They want your project, you want the first district project or initiative. It could be a Kootenai Lake partnership, or it could be a fire interface, or it could be boundary expansions. Then they want a description of the project or initiative, just a real, and then the need or demand for the project or initiative. And then preferred desired outcome and a timeline and expectations. They ask you to rate the project. The mission of the priority is it's actually essential, must be done, important, or would be nice to do. So these are where, this is our chance as your council to have input into your regional district around projects or initiatives that you want to see accomplished in 2014.
Okay. So does anybody want to support Councilor Lang? Sorry.
I guess the regional district is to be commended for this outreach program, but I think the timeline is totally skewered. I mean, they're giving us a week to come up with this, to put something on paper, to indicate to them what projects we might have that are of mutual concern to both the RDCK and the village. That doesn't seem like nearly adequate time to make a proper presentation.
Let me ask you, so is this going to have budget implications then in how regional district allocates staff towards these projects? Because, the budget, March 30th is budget time, and if you haven't put the money in the budget to do these things, then...
I don't think they're looking for new initiatives or anything. These are things, this is where it's probably things that are already in the works. We're not going to be springing, I don't think that the intent is that we spring some new initiative on. We've been talking about Kootenai Lake Partnership for a while. There's no significant budget allocation around that point because we contribute to Service 107, which is a sustainability service that covers the cost of some of that part of it. The Kootenai, this other one, the Kootenai Conservation Project, hasn't fleshed out enough, but definitely, we have wildfire interface issues that are ongoing discussions. Is that a priority? Would you make that a priority over other things we're doing? So the budget implications around that are basically, it's an ongoing thing. It's a matter of us informing, this is a chance for us to inform the regional district of what your top identified ongoing thing, and there's a few things going on. There's boundary expansion, fire interface, Kootenai Lake partnership, things like that.
So basically where we would like
Just-
them to focus their efforts.
I mean, this is your chance to.
Right.
Yeah.
Neil has a comment here.
I'd like to recommend that council consider providing the regional district with the top 10 priorities that council has identified. A good example that might be of interest to the regional district would be the Kaslo River intake project being in the top 10. Of course, there is a regional district linkage in the option 2 that we were presented with this evening. I don't know whether the regional district would be interested in that, but it would be, it's the kind of thing you might want to put on their radar, that the Kaslo River intake is a priority for the village. Just as an example.
But the regional district, what would be this is, the regional district staff would do, just be informed of that. There's not really anything there's no action on their part, I assume.
No, that's distinct from you providing regional district project suggestions, but I would recommend you give them the village's priorities as well.
Councillor Lane.
Well, I totally agree with Steve Smith, and it definitely would impact on the McDonald Creek subdivision, because one way or another, if there was a big outlay of funding, it would impact on their rates. Now, whether it's
Okay, let me just read this. This is from Chair Kettle. On behalf of the chair, please see the attached director work plan form. The intent is for each of you to submit a form for each project initiative you wish to pursue in 2014. After staff analysis and subsequent recommendation, the request would go to the board for resolution. If approved, the project initiative would be added to the 2014 work plan. Now that's regional district work plan. That's not our work plan. So this is not really totally directly in our ballpark, but we do have. So you think of things where we have overlap with the regional district. So the water issue, it scares me a little bit because.
Bad example, sorry.
Yeah, that's going to crack up. You probably know. I mean, that's you'll get a lot of eyebrows raising down there if you start talking to them about it.
But boundary expansion involves water. No water, no boundary expansion. So I mean, I see a relationship there that will affect what the regional district should be looking at.
Okay.
That's my sort of, okay, you're going to talk boundary expansion, you're going to talk infrastructure. If you're going to talk infrastructure, you're going to talk water. And we're one of the few communities that stepped up to the plate here and worked with our neighbors and got them water. It's a shared service, and there's some serious, challenges there as we've already experienced. And I think, so I'm going to suggest that be one of the you as the voting director would raise that issue of shared water services between municipalities and regional districts. Anyway, Councilor.
So do you want like a specific project in mind, like?
A project or initiative. Then they want a description of the project, so you need to describe this water.
That's kind of good.
So you describe it. Then you have to describe the need for that project or initiative. Then describe the desired outcome. And then a timeline.
I mean, what comes to
And state
mind?
how critical it is. So, I'm right now at this point, the water development to me, I'm all ears, but help me here because I don't have enough resources alone to fill this form out with. The water thing seems kind of too broad and general for me to be I can't wrap my mind around the specifics. If the CAO or somebody wants to jot it down, I'll go down there and I'll fight for it. Just tell me what I'm fighting for.
Councilor
Well,
Leeson.
I can think of something like a regional tourism initiative or something like that. But I don't have anything specific. I don't know if that would fit under there, but, you know,
Yeah.
we want to, I mean, we do the central Kootenai display at the UBCM. So something like that where we're doing regional tourism rather than specific community.
Councilor Lang.
What is the date today?
14.
Yeah.
And they're saying this has to be done before the board meeting on the 16th. That's 48 hours.
Let's run out on January 8th.
Well, whatever.
Yeah.
I think we're dead in the water here.
Yeah.
So I just don't
Yeah.
see it. To make a presentation of it that would be subsequently handed off to their staff for discussion and then a resolution being brought forward.
Councilor Hewitt.
I guess the thing to ask would be, Councillor Holland has put forward a couple of suggestions that he must feel comfortable that he can put into a form that he could take forward. Do we agree with those as something that could be taken forward? And would we like him to do that?
I don't have a problem with it if he thinks he can put enough flesh on the bone. But there's many areas of mutual concern that we have, but they don't. You can't capsulize them in this document they've sent us and have any meaningful discussion.
Well, if you look through the reason I sent the suggestion to people by partnership, and then I went on and sent you a sample from Slocan City. Basically, not totally out of laziness, but it was quite easy because Slocan, they went for their stewardship plan. So, for the lake management plan. So what that does is that's multi-jurisdictional. We share that in common with Area D. We share it in common with Area E and F. We share it in common with Area B and Nelson. So I know that if you submit something like that, because it's cross-jurisdictional, that you're going to get some traction on it. It's not completely centered around Kaslo. I know that the Kootenai Lake Partnership is it's a burgeoning activity that's going on, and that's why I suggested. And I think there's lots of room for us to be cooperating. So it's not so centric around just Kaslo. It's areas where you're going to join hands with your other participants in the regional district to move something forward.
Yeah.
So thinking in terms of that, for me, it's either Kootenai Lake Partnership, wildfire interface. Boundary expansion is, I would say, kind of one of the lower ones. The more areas you apply to now, then what we have in common is Kootenai Lake, and it's been undermanaged or the vehicles around creating things like shoreline management initiatives and things like that have been undersubscribed. They've not, and we're struggling with that right here in our community. That used to be a huge issue for us around our foreshore. So if we were to send an issue in like that, we're going to have lots of brotherhood with our other areas and regions, because I know that they're not going to discount it. They're going to, even if it's not what they identify as top, they're going to look at it and go, yeah, we share that in common with your community too. So that's why I suggested that. It would be easy for me to flesh that one out, but I certainly didn't want to do it without consulting with you guys. And I'm very glad we're having a relatively wide open conversation about it. It's good. I'm sorry that we didn't have time to go to committee. It would be much more appropriate in a committee format, but here we are. Timeline's restricted. The best I could recommend to council from sitting at the table and knowing what's going on down there would be something like the Kootenai Lake Partnership Plan. Think of another initiative that has broad jurisdictional appeal for the other areas too, that they're going to get shoulder to shoulder with you to move forward on.
Councilor Leafland?
I mean, I support what you're going to bring forward. I can't think of anything else right now. I'm tired.
Yeah, sorry. I understand.
Go ahead. Those are great.
So we happy?
Well, the Kootenai Lake Partnership,
Yeah.
I can do that. I don't have to run over to Neil and ask him to write it for me. I can do that.
So do you need a formal resolution or just the,
I don't know. What do you, this is what I'm going to stick to this. That's a pretty focused thing. If you guys are comfortable, and quite honestly, you've all got in your email the worksheet, the work plan sheet from Slogan. It's going to be very similar because basically we're kind of following in the footsteps of what they've done in Slogan over this process. We're not creating the wheel here. We're rolling in well-trodden tracks, and I would basically, so you guys have got something in your email that shows very broadly what I would intend to do with this. And what I'll do is I'll try to draft it tomorrow, and I'll get it out to you on Wednesday, so you can all have a chance. Tomorrow's Wednesday.
Yeah.
I'll get it out tomorrow.
Okay.
And if there's any big, giant, huge red flags that fly up, be sure to run me off. Does that sound agreeable?
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks. I don't think we need a resolution on that, because you guys are going to see it before it goes. That's okay.
So, we got 9E, or Council Home, Kootenai Lake Stewardship Partnership, so we kind of dealt with that.
Yep.
Okay. Accounts payable.
I move that we approve the accounts payable.
Moved by Councilor Hewitt, second by Councilor
amount
Kane.
of- Which figure is it that we're supposed to use? Because there's a difference there. And
I thought it was the,
a larger?
but it was, yeah, and I apologize for the system tonight.
Oh, looks like it's the lower, because there's a, yeah.
Okay, I am totally confused here.
Well, yeah,
Oh,
that is,
difference listing attached.
oh no, okay. So it would be the lower amount of $179,022.78. In the system, it's put in the total for the one payroll run on the check amount instead of, yeah, so it's over. Fine. Now that I've looked at it, I didn't understand it to be,
So-
but I can see.
Is it 179 or 187?
179 is how I interpret it.
Okay.
179,022.78.
Second.
Moved by Councilor Hewitt, second by Councilor Leathwood. Discussion. Call the question. All in favor?